Namaste, everybody. So I decided to come back today and talk to you guys about the energies. Yesterday we were having a lot of difficulties getting Ruben on and being able to talk. And I think it has to do with actually what's going on with these energies. There seems to be a lot of like the static energy, right? And I'm gonna bring Ruben on, so give me just a second to let him. How are you? And hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey,
Hey
Ruben.
guys.
So I was just saying that we came back on today. We decided to come back on talk about this energy and also about what happened yesterday, because I think it has to do with like the collective energy. There's a lot of static, right?
hmm
And I think you use that word, and I actually really like that word. But also, um, there's a weird energy. Let me just put that out there, right?
Right.
And there's also like a lot of shifting in this energy. Um, it seems like every day there's something kind of new coming in, but overall there's an energy that we're dealing with, and that's kind of what Ruben and I are going to address here today. And it has to do mainly with the energy that is coming in. It's very strong, and whenever we have these big surges of energy come in, these big waves, they feel like tsunami waves, and they bring in all of the stuff with them, right? But also it affects our mind, and in many ways, because it's also light that comes in, and it shifts things around for us as well, like on a cellular level, molecular level. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that aspect, because I feel like this energy specifically right now is affecting the divine masculine, because it's strongest for them right now. And this is really what's changing the dynamics, because what I feel for the masculine, as I'm kind of channeling this energy that's coming in, is that they were blindsided by this. They didn't see it coming. They didn't know uh, the impact is a good word that this would have on them, like the relationship. And I think the way they've treated it in the past, they're not really allowed to treat it that way anymore, which means they're not allowed to treat us that way anymore, right? And they're seeing it on their own hearts, because basically that's what's being put in front of them. What this relationship is, what it is to them, and what it means to them. So there is a lot of the energy of testing coming up. It's on both sides, because the other thing with this energy is that anything that you haven't worked through, divine feminine is coming up for you. Uh, and my guides are asking me to address this. And please do know that I channel energy and I channel whatever comes through. A lot of people think that I'm harsh on the divine feminine at times, and you might feel it that way. Um, but just know that sometimes triggers come up for you to see things, or that's what triggers are. It's for you to see things. But what I have seen for the divine feminine on the journey, and a lot of other people are also noticing this um, collectively happening with the divine feminine energy, is that a lot of the divine feminine have been waiting, like this waiting game, right, for the divine masculine to kind of shift. And through that, it's like they've given like their love, their light, their unconditional love, but it has been on this almost like conditional basis of the divine masculine returning, right? And all this time has passed, and we're the masculine. They're not here. And so now it's turned into, well, you know what? I'm just going to either deny, which is an energy, I got to tell you, on both sides. The denial energy is very strong. Or let me retitle this, because maybe that's, just is easier to conceptualize. I'm not sure. But a lot of people are, you'll see this in the collective, like a lot of the divine feminines are like renaming their channels or whatever, and it's a way of denying it's the same thing. Um, or this no longer fits in with, whatever it is, because it's so easy to opt out of it. Like if you're not a true twin flame, sure, like it is easy to opt out, just sign off, right? But if you're a true twin flame, that's not an option, right? And so you cycle back to understanding that that's not really an option. And what's underneath all that, like it's work that you have to do, and that's what people are trying to bypass is the work. So that's kind of what's coming up for the feminine. I got to put that out there and just kind of say it like it is. And also, the other thing that goes with that is that if it doesn't fit, like a lot of people are, again, like changing the label itself, like twin flame, but also the masculine. It's like they want to trade him in for somebody else. Because that's also easier, right? Why not? Let's trade in our masculine. That's awesome. That's an awesome idea, but like a lot of people ask me this, like, can I move on? And my answer is always, well, go ahead and try, and that will give you the answer. Like, I know I have, and as much as I wish, that was kind of like that's the easy out. So I get it. I get why people do it, right? I'm not putting anyone down or doing that at all. It's just what it is. I just really honestly speak truth. So that's kind of the divine feminine energy. For the divine masculine, they're in a state where a lot is coming up for them. It would also be easier for them to just deny this, right? Because why not? Why not go back to the life the way we knew life before twin flame and try to be ignorant?
Right. And I
Right?
think ideologically speaking, it's so much easier. And it's something that's come up for me a lot lately, especially because of our environments and our workplace. And it's kind of where I posted a couple of days ago. It's like love is not an option. And not only is it not an option or is not a choice, but to feel what they feel, to wake up at 4:30 in the morning because they're freaking out, or to see what they see, and so on and so have you, as the connection in, as it's the same soul into bodies, and that connection elevates. It's not, and that's kind of where you go back to saying like it's for true twins, even if we try to move on, and I encourage that, like you said, to the best of the ability, but it's not a choice to be so energetically tethered and interwoven together. If it was, it would be so much easier. And I think that's something that, ideologically speaking, we would love to go back to, because I wholeheartedly disagree at this point with almost everything they do, everything they say. I disagree with them almost from the get-go in a lot of ways. And we talk a lot, we even like today, and it's still like we are wholeheartedly in different places, but it's almost like people can't even conceptualize, well, how are these people so close? But it seems like, I think to the outside world, it's like, do they hate each other? Like, what's going on? And it's just like I think a lot of the push pull, that's not a choice, in a lot of ways.
Actually, that's a really good point. And the other thing that I'm seeing come up, specifically for my dynamic, and because you brought it up, yours as well, and obviously, like the collective is probably feeling this to a degree, depending on where they're at in the journey, is that me and my masculine, we went back to that very place of like being almost rivals. Is that
Right.
like
That's kind of where we're
like we're
at.
at
We're in a
war with each other?
juxtaposition where, yeah, exactly, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and we did that at the very beginning of our journey. We had a very difficult journey, and like there was a point where I talked about this the other day, where he was trying to get me fired because I got him fired, not on purpose, but that was like we were really rivals.
In
And
the
it
3D
feels
sense,
like
yeah.
we've gone back to that. So it's an interesting concept to point out, or just um, point
Well, and I think it goes to the Wheel of
that.
Fortune too, that we were talking about in a way that we didn't
Yeah.
necessarily like experience or even thought about, because like in a lot, it's almost like as they deny their highest calling and their authenticity, and we are in that, it puts the contrast of the two very similar, like the shadow and the light of the yin and yang, and it makes it almost seem like a rivalry, but in the same respect, we are doing what they're not doing and maybe in a lot of ways never did or are unwilling to do. So I think part of the juxtaposition is as we come into our power, the more they reject their own higher calling and inner child, the more contrast is being drawn, if that makes sense.
The more we are in their face, if I could finish that
Right,
sentence
right, because
correctly.
they
Yeah.
really can't. And I think more people are realizing like who is whom in the situation, which I think they tried really
Yeah.
hard to suppress, or they wanted to depict that
Yeah.
they're XYZ and we're getting a favor. It's like, no, no, no. Like, that's
Mhm.
the inverse. But yeah.
Yeah. And what's very interesting about twin flames is they are you and you are them, right?
Right.
So it's like when you're up against each other, you know everything about them, they know everything about you, so you really can't like it's a rivalry, it's a true rivalry, but at the same time nobody really wins.
Right. There is no
Yeah,
winner. It's almost like the
there is no
internal
winner.
struggle that people, like ordinary
Yeah,
people, almost have with their subconscious without. So it's almost like in a lot
yeah,
of ways, it feels like I am their subconscious because I'm like, you
yes,
shouldn't do that. And I know I'm telling you, you shouldn't do that. And I've been saying so. And so people are like, well, if they stand so hardly opposite, then how can they be, this close, or how can they love each other?
yeah,
It's like if your subconscious was outside of you, and it
right,
is a wholehearted, it's struggle within, so without, kind of
yeah,
a way of explaining it, I think, in a lot of ways.
yeah. No, it's that war that's going on with their mind and their heart, and right now it's like their ego is battling their heart, and we are their heart in front of them, and they are battling this
Right.
very strongly at this moment. So it's an interesting dynamic to see, because the other thing is that in that same mirror, because that's what it is, right? Um, what they're also seeing is the battle of the mind, right? It's all of their inner demons. And this is very much playing out. This is being personified in the physical. So that's what we're going to talk about and get into today, because it's a very interesting concept to understand. Again, I touched on this yesterday, where mental illness, it's very much like, I think, part of many of our paths. Like in some way or another, either we experience it. I know I've experienced many different types of mental illness, and to varying degrees. And I think that we probably all do, if we're going to be honest with each
Right. I
other,
think we should
right?
like put asterisks on mental illnesses. I think in a lot of ways is symptoms of our abilities, like they say in Kabbalah. Like when you think, when you put your finger, everyone will say that electricity is a good thing, and it's good that we have light. But if you put your finger in an electrical socket, you're going to get electrocuted. But electricity is not bad. It's just a misuse of our power. And I think a lot of empaths and people that are in some ways almost too sensitive, even physically speaking, like allergies and so on and so forth, for this paradigm, and the same way are so powerful in another. So we are particularly, I think, more finely attuned as a predisposition, and so then we experience these unexplainable absorptions of things.
Yeah.
And as we get stronger and we step into our power, we realize, oh wait, that is actually XYZ. Sorry, I just felt like I wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. And I think, yeah, labels, I don't care for them, and I don't like to use them, but sometimes it's just easier to say things with labels for the point of getting the
Right, right,
concept
right.
across. But yeah, please take what resonates, and if you want to put a different label on it, please do. But anyways, so with mental illness, what happens is that when we're tapped into this energy, it affects our nervous system, and that's kind of like the system that affects everything, right? So when a lot of this energy comes in, and if you do research like on the Schumann resonance and whatnot and how that kind of works, because it's an energy field outside of us that affects our energy field, our aura. And if there's a lot going on outside with electricity and, you know, all of that, obviously it's going to affect our field. And depending on how much of this is coming in, you know, this is kind of what's going on. And with the brain and all of the waves, right? This is kind of
Right.
what happens. This is what, like, the electricity, if you will, that's going on in our brains. When there's too much of that, like, it's almost like our brain starts to misfire, whatever, whatnot, different things like that. But if you have mental illness, it heightens these things, like, um, and again, it's a label, and please, you know, there's a lot of different forms of this, but like, for example, if you tend to have like paranoia, or having that, this energy will make that worse. If you tend to have like anxiety, maybe you have it mildly, this will exacerbate it. If you have depression, um, again, that's like those lower energies, this will exacerbate that. So right now, what we're seeing is like whatever is going on with the masculine is being exacerbated. And I also want to say, not just the masculine, it's both energies, because again, remember, this is all energy, anyways. But when you do your work, you clear a lot of those things, because you have to remember, like, anxiety is attached to worry and
Right.
different things,
Right.
right? And I'm not going to get into all of that. I am a nurse, but that's not what I
And
do
that's what
on this
the reason
spiritual plane.
sorry, the reason I had said that about the what I said earlier is not so, is more so I think a lot of people, especially the masculine, it's easy for them to write us off as like, oh well, you know, you know, it's a mental, it's like, no, like, you're a nurse, you're like, you're a high functioning professional, like, you know, you're a professional, and so I guess what I'm trying to make the point is that is not like we are consumed by this, or that we are encapsulated by this, and I think I was just making the point that I think a lot of people want to write it off as just that, and I think the broader point is that it's a symptom of a larger problem. Is the only reason I interjected to say that a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Okay, so like with the anxieties, also the other thing that's happening right now is there's a lot of the telepathy, like
Mm-hmm.
we're able to connect
Mm-hmm.
in with each other, right? So what we're actually feeling, like, some of us might be feeling our own thing. Please don't like project everything on them, because that's
Mm-hmm.
not what I'm trying to
Right.
teach you
Right.
guys,
Right.
or,
Right.
you know, that's not what I'm saying at all. But I know, because I experienced this the other day, and I'll actually, let me just talk about that to give an example, right? And then we'll go into like deeper into the mental illness type of thing. So the first, I actually have two experiences um, of this particular in type of incident. And the first one was in Paris. And again, I'm just talking about my own experience to give understanding to the bigger picture. And again, everybody's situation is very different and specific to where they're at and their masculine is at, and perhaps like their own masculines, like fears and different things like that. Okay, so when I was in Paris, was the first time it happened to me. Because again, let me go back a little bit. I've had in the past like anxiety. I've dealt with that for many years, to where like triggers no longer get to me, because I've overcome many things. And so but I understand it. I understand anxiety very well, because I have suffered from it. Depression also, on this journey we go through, and again, I hate labels, but if you go through the dark night, it very much, if you want to label it something, you can label it that, or just feeling like you're crazy and delusional, and a lot of other labels we can give ourselves, right? But we're not going to go there. Okay, so I have like experience with that, to know like my own, you know, psychology and what goes on up there, right? Okay, so anyways, I was in Paris, and it was like the third day I was there, I don't remember, but I was getting communication with my divine masculine, and then all of a sudden, like, it was cut off. And that particular, well, this is actually the day it was cut off. That particular morning, like, I couldn't lay down in bed, and I was like, what the heck's wrong with me? Like, I'm exhausted because I had flown over. It's like a 12-hour flight. For the first 2 days we were there, we were doing all kinds of stuff, and it was exhausting. Like, I should have been tired, I should have been able to sleep, and for the life of me my brain wouldn't stop, and I was like, what the heck is this? Because like, that's never happened to me, where my brain was just, it wouldn't stop, and I was like, oh my god, I felt like I was losing my mind. It was a very interesting feeling. But anyways, I got up, and it's like super early in the morning. It was dark outside. I'm in Paris, and I'm like, this is not safe, but I felt like I had to go walk, and so I go outside. I went for a walk. I ended up walking that day for 3.5 hours, and I couldn't stop. I was just walking, walking. I ended up texting him that day, and he texted me back, and that was the last time I heard from him. But I knew, and I confirmed it with him, that it was his energy. Like, he was actually thinking about sending me a text, and I could feel that, but I could also feel everything else that was happening in his brain. And also, like, what I felt was like paranoia, to be honest. And then my divine masculine suffers from post-traumatic stress, so I was feeling like the actual symptoms of that. And I'm very familiar with that because in the hospital, like, I used to work a lot, and I've worked with a lot of mental illness, and especially being an oncology nurse, like, I've just seen a lot of that kind of illness, and I've worked with lots of people that have that. So I understood it from, like, the psychology of working with them. Like, whenever I would give them their medicine, I would never approach them like where I would scare them, because I know how they react. Like, I know how they are, but to be in the mind of somebody like that, it's two different things, right? That day, it was messed up. Like, in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really messed up. That's all I could say about that particular incident. And, like, I had to walk it off for 3 hours, like, walk, and I mostly ran that morning, but, like, that was that morning. Okay, so then this was maybe 2 days ago. I went out to dinner with my daughters, and so I hadn't felt anything since then like that. So I went out to dinner with my daughters, and we were sitting down in a restaurant, and it's like a fairly quiet restaurant. But again, like, I'm not used to being around people, so just being around people bothers me anyways. But anyways, like, there was like this party that walked in, and there was like all these guests that kept walking behind me, and I don't know why, like, I started to feel like paranoia. And I was with my daughters again, so, like, I kept telling myself to get up from the table and walk outside. I just felt like I needed to breathe. But for some reason, I felt like I was, like, almost like being claustrophobic, where you can't do anything, you can't react. I couldn't get up for the life of me. I could not get up. And all these people kept walking behind me, and I seriously felt like I wanted to just get up and tell everybody to, oh God, did I, this is so weird. So I lost, did I lose you guys? Hello? Am I still on, you guys? I know I'm on live, so if you're able, oh, okay, there it goes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure what in the world happened. That was really, really weird. Okay, let's see.
Sorry about that. I don't
Hey.
know what happened. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, I felt like I wanted to get up and, like, start almost like telling everybody to sit, like, the F down. Like, I mean, that was what my brain was thinking. And I started to have these very irrational thoughts, uh, and I knew, like, I was almost like panicking, but at the same time it was like aggressive. there was a lot going on in my mind, but I couldn't react at the same time. It was very, very bizarre. And so like I finally was able to get up and like get some fresh air and calm down and recognize that that was not me, and I was tapping into my divine masculine's mind, and that like if I would have been anywhere like at home, I could have gotten out of that thought pattern and that process that was going on in my head. But for some reason it was like my guides wanted me to experience that in that moment so I would have the experience and be made to have that experience, right? But what I realized later is that I was tapping into my divine masculine's brain, and I was able to see the way that he functions like on a day to day, like what his battles are, his fears, and how like he battles with this state of mind. And it was awful, to be quite frank and honest. And the point of it is that I know that this is heightened for a lot of people that have mental illness. And I know Ruben also wants to talk about this because you have some
Right.
experience around this, and you can kind of give us some insight, some real insight into more of that. But the point being that I wanted to share, you guys know me. I like to share my experience because I know when I go through something, many other people are, and I know I help a lot of people, and I kind of put myself out there doing it, but it's okay. You guys can, judge me all you want. I really don't care at this point, so it is what it is. But the other thing is that I actually had a few people, after I talked about this in one of the videos, I don't remember when, but somebody reached out and said that they're having, or they also have like a public channel, and they've had a few people tell them that they've gone into the hospital for heart
Mhm.
attacks or these type of like closely related type of symptoms. And so again, there are people that are having these type of experiences. And so sometimes when you're prepared and you kind of know what's happening, if you do have something like this, it's like you can have peace at the same time, or kind of be assured that it's the energy and not anything serious. But that does not dismiss that this could be serious. So like always, if you are having anything that that's serious, that you need to seek medical advice, always seek that first. So I'll let you go ahead and come in, Ruben, and talk about
Right, and I'm so glad you said that because I second that. Obviously, if you guys are struggling with something that is so overwhelming, you're having thoughts of, uh, we are not medical. Oh, I'm not a medical advisor. I'm not a doctor. I'm just simply here to offer my spiritual experience regarding this subject matter as someone that has. So similar to kind of your story, I saw my the Divine Masculine, the Twin Flame, at Universal a couple of weeks ago, and so they had planned out the whole trip. They were like, "Oh yeah, like it was their idea." They were like, "We want to spend time at Universal. Let's go roller coasters, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, of course." So the day comes, and so I was like, "Hey, like, do you want to hang out, or what do you want to do, or whatever?" So then he kind of starts to get really flustered. Now, mind you, again, this was his idea, and so he starts like not answering the phone. Then he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm leaving the elevator," and so like I'm already. He's like, "I just got to Universal," and then I was like, "Okay, well, I'm like a block away," and then he kind of starts freaking out. Mind you, I'm very like we're at a work like people like it's Universal Studios. You know what I mean? Like we're not at some skeezy library or something. So I was like, okay, and I was like, well, I'm here. So he runs into Universal like on his own. Mind you, that he wanted to do all these things. And I'm like, where are you? Like, I'm here. And then he's like, oh, no, no, like, I went to the park. I'm coming out now. I and I'm like, I'm so confused. Like, did you want to go on your own? Like, what's going on? And so finally, he comes out or whatever, and then he's like, like he's like hyperventilating, and I'm like, are you okay? What, what's happening? He's like, no, 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 no. He's like, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And I'm like, are, are you sure? Like, and so then he's like, no, no, like we're here, we're having a good time, and I'm like, like, am I what? Like, so in that moment, I realized. So then we walk a little bit further, and then I was like, hey, like, so can we take a picture? There's no photo of us together or whatever. He's like, no, 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 like I see that, then I'll get blackmail, like all these things, and I'm like, we're two adult people, fully clothed, at Universal Studios, ahead of a work event, like what? But in that moment, I realized. So this is where I will then preface and go back to like the mental, my spiritual take on what I perceive to be like a mental stability. So there's something. So again, this spiritual take on a mental experience. Take what resonates. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician. But growing up, I too, and a lot of almost everyone that I know that is very, very hyper, that has now evolved to become, varying degrees of light worker, psychic, or whatever, have experienced anxiety to whatever degree. What I came through to realize through the dark night of the soul and like that experience is really understanding like what it is, and through the twin flame journey, understood okay, like what is, because I really ever since I will say this, ever since my twin flame experience, I experienced sadness, longing, but I didn't experience like a depression or things like that. There was a sense of peace of everything that was happening. Like I knew I was in my alignment. I knew whatever was happening was divinely orchestrated and divinely guided. And although it was painful and extremely painful, and I was like, why me? Why, like a lot of things, I did not particularly experience uh, signs of depression or anything like that to a degree. With that being said, when I started to tap in more to my different abilities, I realized that that the anxiety I had when I was younger um, and what have you were symptoms of being able to understand the energy around me, and being able to compute like not just people's thoughts but like emotions, and then had so much confirmation of that thereafter to the point of like stock market divination and stuff like that. I digress, but I came to realize that the ability came from a predisposition to being finely attuned for our calling. So with that being said, I've realized in that moment that as the divine masculine begins to suppress more and more and more the divine calling, wants to go back into that 3D paradigm, the ego, because ego cannot hold on to the heart space, right? It's almost like when they talk about like fear, anger, anxiety. Those are derivative emotions. So what I mean is like they stem from being hurt. They're not like underliers. They stem from being hurt or different things, or an excess energy, so on and so forth. So I've realized that the lower vibrational energies cannot hold on to the heart space. So, in my opinion, based on my experience, what I saw in that moment, and what I've experienced growing up, is that ego will then try to hold on. And when I say ego in Kabbalah, it's like it's the 3D. So just really quickly, my interpretation of ego is that I feel like we're born to love, we're born creative, we're born entrepreneurs. I think as we plug into the 3D paradigm, the moment we tell our kids that it's not happiness and unconditional love that and their creativity that they should focus on, but rather being the top of the class or the best in school or the honor rolls, that's in that moment, that's when we in a way disassociate the inception of the disassociation of the inner child and the higher self to plug into that system that it requires outside validation. And I feel like it's in that moment where ego, then lower vibrational ego, then has the opportunity, then with that gap, hijack the pain or the human body to then have that duality. In some ways, I almost think like that disassociation is the original sin, and I won't go into that. So fast forward to present. I feel that with that being said about ego, I feel that those exterior validations, exterior depictions, start to play tricks on the head of the divine masculine as they have one foot in the higher calling, another foot in the 3D paradigm,
Mm.
and because the way, now going back to what I was saying about ego, cannot hold on to heart space and unconditional love and higher self and inner child, it begins to further play tricks on their mind because that is what it can't hold on to. So, what I realized in that moment is that as he plugged back into that lower vibrational depictions of outside validation and fear and all of that, whenever he decided to. Now, I was a big, so just a quick side note, I was a big proponent of, in that moment that he, for the greater, the best good for him, when I had originally left work, the first time, it was to build my relationship with them because they said they never wanted to lose me, so on and so forth. It wasn't material, it wasn't money, it wasn't work. When they went back, I was a proponent of doing whatever is in their higher calling, but they decided in my situation to go back to certain kinds of behavior that I always wholeheartedly disapproved with. So as it's almost like they got a taste of the red pill or like or that, and they a lot of them they were allured by the idea of a world before the twin flame and the fame and or success or whatever. And in Kabbalah, they always say that, you know, if spirituality and your higher calling and your mission is not number one, the enemy or the opponent is going to get in through whatever that is, being money and so on and so forth. So as they
Yeah.
plug into that matrix or into not what they're doing or their work, but rather the consciousness of the lower vibrations of who they used to be, that ego is now then playing more so tricks on their mind, and it's brewing up as they are supposed to be in their alignment, and so it's almost hitting fever pitch, and it's hitting fever pitch in their mind. And like you, I there's something called in the medical terms, and you know, we don't know. I think medically speaking, I think you can speak on this. We don't know where thoughts come from. We kind of know where the electrical waves and what have you, like what's being triggered, but we don't actually know the origin of thoughts and so on and so forth. So I got a second sight because I can always see through my divine masculine, and he can see through me. And what I mean is, like, he can literally, like, sometimes see what I'm looking at, and vice versa. I got a glimpse, like you, of this extreme, like, what is depicted as the obsessive side of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is where they don't act on the compulsion, but they have this all-consuming thought and paranoia in an endless loop, and it's literally like hell, because they don't know where the thought is coming from. And so what I got to realize in that moment, because I was very clear that it was because they weren't my memories, they were what I knew were his memories. I was like, oh, he's experiencing this as he is rejecting more and more and more, not just the twin flame union, but his highest calling. And the more he does that, it is like the the 3D illusions that are playing in his head, that exterior validation is now consuming them, because it's almost like the divine is saying, like, you know, you want to reject your higher calling, sure. And in that moment, even further, the ego becomes powerful and exacerbated in their mind, holding on to a lot of these things. When I was younger, going back to light worker, just a quick note, I had a lot of like, I guess, anxiety and like something similar. And then I later found out that I was highly intolerant to histamines, which is in all this food. And so then as a detox, I realized that that's what a lot of it was triggered. And that's kind of when I went back and said that some of us are predisposed. Like, everyone gets affected by caffeine, everyone gets affected by, you know, drugs and alcohol, which I don't do. But the divine masculine, as they revert back to those things, they have a predisposition to even be stronger and more violently affected by those things, especially now more than ever that I feel like they've had their foot in a divine calling, and almost like, you know, they see the world and the connection and the 5D for what it is and unconditional love, and then a foot out. So now it's just like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost like now playing that duality that is now without, as you said yesterday or 2 days ago, that those demons are manifesting without, they're also now playing within. So it's almost like a quadruple situation going on in their mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It very much makes sense. So we're going to talk about, though, the pure OCD
Okay.
concept.
Okay.
So I think that's just important because I think a lot of the masculine are very, like, controlling, right? Like that narcissistic tendency that many of them have, and it has to do with needing to control your environment. But it's also that energy of, like, wanting to be or being that perfectionist. But this journey teaches you that we are all perfectly imperfect, and we're allowed to be human because we are in human bodies, having this human experience. And so that's kind of what I feel is coming up at this time for a lot of them as they kind of burn through their ego. It's coming up the strongest. And so a lot of these tendencies are coming up for them. It's that, like, to see that they're that way. It's like that mirror is being put on them, that perfectionist mirror.
Right.
And it's almost like it's being seen in this way of like that compulsive, obsessive behavior. And so this is kind of what's playing out in their environment. My energy just like,
I just got a couple of kind of like downloads on that as you were saying that.
yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So with what is depicted as it's called pure O of it's a deviation of obsessive compulsive disorder. And so what I'm getting is that as they reject that higher calling, and they reject their the the anxieties are escalating, leading us now to, I think, where something that is as hellish and nightmare as pure O, which is essentially is what makes pure O different than obsessive compulsive disorder. And I got insight that I'll just say some masculines might be experiencing this, is when we think about obsessive compulsive disorder, we think of, in the 3D terms, in this paradigm, we think about like hand washing, cleaning, things like that. The steps to Puro is that, or obsessive compulsive disorder, is that the thought enters your mind, it triggers the anxiety levels, the nervous system, that it makes you compulsively then do that. So, pure O is when you do not act compulsively, you're in that juxtaposition of anticipation, and it's consuming you because you feel like, going back to your story, like you're about to do these things that don't even actually even resonate with you. And that's where you can bring different spiritual
Traumas.
depictions, right? So going into the traumas, so they're having these looping thoughts that they feel they don't resonate with, that may be correlated to past traumas, and those past traumas then begin to, because they're not facing them, they're avoiding them and they're running away from them and they're not trying to heal them, they're trying to escape. They're now, what I'm getting is endlessly looping in their mind, and it's triggering that fever pitch anxiety as if they're actually going to be that person. So if you look up Puro and do your own diligence on this, but most people will tell you that they are not particularly predisposed to doing the things that are looping in their mind so anxiously than someone not experiencing those thoughts at all. But the fact that they are experiencing thoughts that may be predicated on their past traumas, so looping in such a looping way and so endlessly, makes them question whether they're becoming that person. So now what I'm getting, again, this is where viewer discretion is advised, and do your own spiritual diligence and your own medical diligence and do what's best for you. What I'm getting, however, from a spiritual standpoint, is that as they are not facing those demons, and they are now knowing, able, and willingly suppressing or trying to suppress them, and ego in some ways is now hijacking those vulnerabilities and looping them endlessly in their mind so that they cannot escape them. And what's coming to me about the divine feminine is that when they're with a karmic, or workaholism or whatever, they can almost, because they're not even doing their own work, they're not even trying to figure out what's going on in their head. So they're not even looking at, could this be pure, or could this be spiritual? They're just like, they're almost guilty as charged in their head, even though they don't even resonate with those thoughts. So what's happening is that when they're with a karmic or with work, they feel like, well, these people do not know what I'm thinking or feeling, because even though it doesn't resonate with what they are thinking or feeling, even though they don't align with those things looping endlessly, And if you guys decide to look up Puro, you might get a drift of what I'm talking about. And it doesn't resonate with me, but I got insight into them. As those things loop endlessly in their mind, they're thinking, well, people that are not their twin will not be able to identify the thoughts that are now so guilty in their mind. So let's say that, when those thoughts, and this is what I got too from the previous from the woman that he was with, who I don't even want to get into that, but the lower the when he would, like, let's say, hold on to someone that he not only hardly cares about, but is not any doesn't know them, when they hold them or whatever, because they don't, and this I know for a fact, is they never love this person, or I know I know that, but when they hold to them, it's like trying to make those anxieties and thoughts go away without that karmic or person or work or whoever knowing that they exist. Whereas to with us, they cannot circumvent that, because we're gonna be like, hey, you are experiencing this at the moment. I see it in your eyes, I see it in your face, I see it in your thoughts, I see it everywhere. And in their shame and guilt, they can't even begin to face that, not even knowing that it's something that either can be treated or should be treated, or whatever can be overcome. And not only, it's not even that we would force them to face those things, is that they cannot hide those things from us. And and
Can I
go ahead.
can I say something? This is what my guys want me to say this, that many of them have had this for a while. So it would kind of be like me with my anxiety, for example, where I can manage it very easy because I've had it for so long. Like triggers, as soon as they come up, like I know how to, you know, face whatever trigger it is, and I can overcome anything at this point. To the point where like I don't even fear death anymore, and that's part of my spiritual awakening. But to go back to them, um, their fears, and again, this is because I've done the work, right? That's why I can
Right.
overcome so
Right.
much at this point. But for them, they haven't done the work. So, and I remember when this was coming up for me, it was like so persistent in my face. Like the spiritual world, when I was seeing all these things, like I actually thought I was delusional at that point. Like I really wanted to check myself in to the hospital. But I thought that everybody else could see like the crazy delusions. And it was so bad. Like when I would, I shouldn't say so bad. I mean, it's a gift. I know it now. But when I would look at tarot, when I was studying it, I would look at a card and I would seriously like see it, the meaning of it, like as a holographic image in front of me. It was the craziest thing what I was able to do at that time, and it was so freaking scary at the same time. Like I would freak myself out, and that's why I had to stay like just in my own space for so long until I knew how to overcome accepting it for myself that I was gifted and I had visions and I wasn't delusional. Um, and that's kind of like where the masculine is at, because many of them do have these spiritual gifts, and but also like you say, like they could turn into other things, and you have to be really careful on this journey that way. Like for example, I remember when I was really high, like in the point of my journey where I was channeling and I just started writing my book because my guides asked me to, and I would channel a lot of different people that that wanted to cross over to give me, like that were working with me on my
Right.
book, to give me messages and whatnot. I remember my guides would tell me often, like, Sylvia, you need to come back down. Like, it's going to mess with your mentation. And I'd say, how? Like, why? And I would get it because when I would look at a card and like this movie was playing in front of me, I was like, oh my God. Like, it was very, very scary, to the point where at certain times, like, I really wanted to be go into a hospital and like get some help for that because like it was too much. So I share my own experience because I know I'm not crazy now at that point. Like I was questioning myself, but then this is where they are, like where many of them are questioning themselves, like can and but what I was gonna say to finish my thought is I would often think like, can other people see this? And and that's how they feel like you, and so you try to hide it, so it brings on like this panic within you, like, oh my god, like can people see this about me, that whole thing is like you go into this panic around it. So anyways, that's just a side note. I don't
No,
remember.
no, 100%. And kind of what else was coming to me is that not only are they dealing with the things that they've been running from looping endlessly so much in their head, but then also the things they've done. And so a lot of these people have done, like, here's what makes me different from the people before them is they've been using people ruthlessly for a very long time, and they had been in a reckless abandoned kind of way for a very long time. They had been triangulating people for a very long time. They had been antagonizing people for a very long time. The karma, oh, she hates you, don't talk to her, they hate you, so so that is now something that is also not only haunting them, but is placating to the endless looping in their heads. So that is where their demons are almost like coming without, because they've done a lot of things to a lot of people. And what's different is you touched on this at the beginning of this video. What they've done to us, they realize is hurting them as much, if not more, as doing it to themselves, and they can't escape that. So they're in this constant, almost like two balls smashing in their head of like it's like a double-edged sword the more they try to hurt us. But now that they're hurting us less because they're a little bit unplugged, it's almost like the double-edged sword is now like being pulled towards them, and now it's doing this. Um,
Yeah.
because and I was getting a lot of this. It's like I'm not the first person he did this to. Like he's built an everything predicated on things that were not authentic to where he was going, or who he is. And when I say that, they're authentic to that in spirit, and I think that's what we've been holding on to in the 5D, in their inner child. Like they are that, but their ego was controlling. So, and when I say ego, again, to me that means everything that is not for the greater good of all, that is holding on to. So I'm saying fear, paranoia, anxiety, triangulation, narcissism, doing triangulation, hurting people that only love them, that all they did was love them. They're they've sacrificed and almost offered as tribute everyone that's come before us, or so many that's come before us in their life. And with us is the one person they feel like they can try to do that, and they have. I know mine has. But it's as much consuming to them, and it's placating now almost at every directional, on every direction, every level. And it's haunting them, and the things they've done are worthy of being haunted by. It is and it's something that not only does the 3D paradigm has to be overcome, and those things have to shatter, but then everyone that they've done this to is like they not only played us, they played so many people before us, and then everyone around them to this day, because they're still selling this shadow side of ego that they are currently subscribing to. That's what they're still trying to sell, but people can now see through that in our
Yeah.
light. So they're seeing their truth by our light, and they don't know how to react to it, and that's where it's being turned on its head. I guess what I'm saying is those are the intimate dynamics that I'm getting for these very abstract, not abstract, but these very multidimensional
The
energies.
abstract relationships,
Right,
let's just put it out there. Yeah.
right.
And I think you using that word to describe kind of what's happening, that's a great word, because I think at the beginning, this is very abstract, and it could easily be seen by people that don't understand it as crazy, right? So that's kind of what it was. It was that crazy term was put on us. And I feel like for a lot of divine feminine that are like on my wave, we had to pave the path of, well, we'll take that title, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that label, and we kind of use it to our advantage, like, yeah, let them think we're crazy, right? But then meanwhile, we've been growing in our power, right? In our spiritual ability and understanding. And now, for many of the divine feminine, we're here in full light, and that light is very bright. And however that's coming across the masculine, we're not crazy anymore because that title has been dissolved
And they
for us.
wish we were because they almost needed to
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
they wish we were, but now we have this different title, and it's like it encompasses a lot of things, but basically we're like these warriors of light, and everybody can see
Right.
that. No matter who you are,
Hmm.
you could see that about us, that there's no craziness to this. And the only, I think there's passion, and
Right.
there's a lot of it,
Right.
right?
Right.
They see that. They see also mainly people that watch. Uh, is very powerful, like women, men in their divine power. And a lot of people don't know what to call that, other than that we're standing in our truth and in our power, and we're shining
Right.
bright,
Right.
right? And I think people don't know how to give that really a title, but our crazy label has dissolved. Bottom line. So now the divine masculine can project on to us all of these wonderful labels and titles, and so they have to look at themselves, and that's kind of the energy of where they're at. And I think we're going to leave it at that, Ruben, because I do have an appointment. Oh, and the hex, I had to talk about the hex card because it came up. And I have to say this for my divine masculine. He gave me the title of the bubonic plague, and like that was it to his friends. That's who I was. Like, how messed up is that? And also, oh my god, the best title ever that he gave me is I was my name for him and his friends was what the fuck. That was my name.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So here I am. With 17,000 followers, and everybody listens to my story. Me tell my story about him now.
Right.
So yeah, it's fitting actually.
No, it's so true.
It's
And
very fitting.
yeah,
And I'm about to release my book, by the way.
right. Right. No, it's
I'm
so
just kidding.
true. It really, they need to convince themselves that we were crazy, and then
Yeah,
and also that everyone else, and they've called a lot of people crazy before, but now they have to look as like they're the crazy, they're the ones. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because they were
It's
projecting that onto
mm-hmm.
us when really, again, we are tapping into. There's truth to all of this stuff, right?
Right. Right.
There's a lot going on in that mind, and things that they need to face about themselves. So, right, we're, oh my gosh, that I see all these laughing
Yeah.
faces, and it reminds me of that, the sacred clown. That's kind of the
Right.
energy for divine masculine. And I know you posted that, and people are like, "What does that mean?" And here it is. We'll title this after the sacred clown.
That's amazing. Yeah.
There you go. So, all right, thank you everybody for joining us. But I want to say we did, Jen and I did a video on this energy for both the masculine, feminine, and we picked up on some of the karmic energy, and that's on Vimeo. And then Ruben and I are starting a channel, so please do sign in to that, and we'll be talking more about what we're going to be doing on the channel. It's called
New
New
Age
Age Ascension.
Ascension. We'll post the link. I actually, because I went to the server room, my computer's somewhere else, so I can't see the chats and I can't copy and paste it. But there's also the Facebook group. And if you're confused about it, you can also add me or her as a friend. Feel free, and we'll send you the link. But we'll be posting it, and we're really excited because it very much feels like
Yeah.
it was all for this. Not for this, but the twin flame journey is about self union and being in our alignment and our ultimate purpose.
Right.
And I think we're super excited to help anybody, help as many people as we can help,
And on this channel, we're going to be talking about spirituality. So a lot of the concepts, because that is like one of the main questions that I get, like after I give people direction. A lot of people have questions like, where do I even get started? It's that type of thing. And so we're going to be talking about energy, we're going to be talking about just lots of different things based on the journey of twin flame. Um, and again, it's mainly like the different spiritual concepts that are important to understand on this journey. And we're also going to do other stuff like readings, but we're also like going to open up to mainly like the spiritual concepts and kind of getting out of like just the twin flame label, because I think it's important to at this point for myself and Ruben to expand and be a teacher to the collective, and not just twin flames. So, all right, you guys, thank you so very much for joining us today, and we'll put the link up, so please follow us on our teaching.
For sure.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.